up that old fossil.
Going to Toshi Station to pick up some power converters.
That's no move.
We're all fine here now, thank you. How are you?
Welcome to the Star Wars Nerds Podcast. I'm Dan Vadabonker.
And I'm Kenton Larson.
And it is time. I'm pressing buttons here, hold on. It is time for the Nerd Panel. Somewhat belated this time. We usually do it the day after we all see the new Star Wars movie. But not everybody got out to see it on opening night. So we have with us Chris Schiffmann. Welcome back.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Kelly Stifora.
Thank you for having me.
And Carson Samson.
Hey, pleasure to be here.
All three of you have been on our podcast before, so thanks for coming back. And we're going to talk about Solo, obviously. That's the elephant in the room. That is the new Star Wars movie. I want to take a minute before we begin, though, in all seriousness, guys. I do want to take a minute here to just to mourn the loss of Star Wars, because it's over. You guys realize that Star Wars is over, right? Like it's
the brand is dead. Is that
it's
what you're
dead.
saying?
I mean, this movie didn't even make $100 million in this opening weekend. How can it continue? They got to cancel the whole thing. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it was the number one movie in the world by a much smaller margin than the last Star Wars movie was the number one movie in the world. So clearly, it's over.
I think Episode 4 made $100 million in its first run. Because movie tickets were cheaper.
Oh yeah,
back in the day.
Yeah,
but that was considered a smash success.
Well, no kidding. No, that's why I'm obviously joking, but that's the point, right?
But there's a whole bunch of people who say that online who aren't joking.
Well, I know, but the what I'm getting to are these listicles and clickbait articles that are all like, it's the biggest flop, it's the first real flop, and blah blah blah. And really, I mean, it's doing okay. It's not a flop. A flop would be like $20 million opening weekend. A flop would be complete and utter failure. Nobody saw it. It's not that.
Yeah, well, and I always think of a flop as meaning that it didn't make back the money that they spent on it. If it doesn't make back its budget, then it's a flop.
But that's over the course of its entire theatrical run, right?
Of course, yeah.
So, but it didn't make it back its budget in the first 3 days, so that's a failure.
I'm starting to see headlines. Okay, that was the second wave of headlines, but now the new headlines are actually Solo as a film is pretty good. I saw that headline today.
Yeah.
Where I was like, despite what you might have heard, it's actually pretty good. So we've sort of come back. We've come full circle, I think, on this thing. But we're going to turn things over to the panel in a second. But why don't we want to start by saying I loved Solo. Dan liked Solo.
I liked it. I really wanted to see it again before this panel. I just did not get a chance. I was telling Kelly yesterday, my kids, it was the High Neighbor Festival in Transcona last weekend, and that won out over one of the movies.
Not a good sign.
Yeah. So and then this weekend, of course, is The Incredibles. So good luck trying to get my kids to go see Solo when The Incredibles are on the big screen. So I don't know. Don't know when I'm going to go see it again. But I did like it. I did like coming out of the theater. The feeling was that I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a good movie. I
loved it, and I still love it. But we have some guests here. And so maybe we should start by going around the table. And do we want to do the quick one-sentence review? And then before we open it up to a broader discussion, so why don't we start with Chris? What do you think?
I think Solo is just another, mediocre Ron Howard movie. I still enjoyed it, but after the afterglow of the film, you just kind of felt like, it was okay. And I think, just that's what the audience reaction was. There was half the moviegoers were like, I'm not going to go see it. And then the half that did see it were like, but others did love it. And I'm happy that you loved it. So I won't be one of those other Star Wars fans who hate you for loving Star Wars.
You just alluded to something, though, that I have to follow up on, and that is there was a glow after the initial screening. So what happened so you liked it, and then what happened? And then you read the haters.
I liked it, and then
I'm a hater too.
No, I just kind of reflected on it just never had the same moments that the previous three modern Star Wars films had, where you had these fun moments, or just this kind of thrill ride that I had, or even the laughs. I know you said it was hilarious. I didn't find it that funny. It was just kind of like, it's okay. But it could also be, I saw it on a Saturday afternoon with an empty theater.
But that was it was the opening weekend, wasn't it not?
It was, yeah.
So even seeing it on a Saturday afternoon in an empty theater opening weekend is quite telling.
I was shocked how empty it was.
And Kenton and I said that we went on opening night, very first screening, and it was the first time in the modern era that the theater has not been packed for a Star Wars opening.
No, it was not. It was not full.
No,
but it was well attended. But the whole front area where no one wants to sit, of course, nobody wants to sit there, so that was empty. But I don't think we've seen that before at a Star Wars premiere. But we saw it with a crowd that actually loved it. So that they really did. Like as I said to Dan in the last scene, people were like laughing. They were loving it. Like they were like soaking it up. So that couldn't hurt, of course. So if you saw it in a quiet room, I think that would have an impact.
Just like how you saw Avengers with a bunch of kids who didn't care about it, whereas what
a piece of crap.
I loved Avengers. It was opening night crowd. They're into it.
I think that it's a taste problem you have, Chris. All right, so we'll move to our next. Like how we move to the next after the insult. Kelly, before I'll save my insult until you're done. Kelly,
I'm gonna climb on the fence right between you and Dan. You loved it. Dan liked it.
Oh.
I liked it a lot. And we did talk about this previously, and I might have given you guys the impression that I didn't like it. The issue that I have with Solo actually doesn't have anything to do with the movie itself. It is a glow issue, like Chris brought up. But for me, it's just that we seem to have officially hit the point of Star Wars saturation where I no longer feel, even in December when I went to see The Last Jedi, I still had that, my 12-year-old self came fully to life and I had that giddy, I'm going to see a new Star Wars movie feeling. I walked out of The Last Jedi with that giddy, I'm going to see a new Star Wars feeling. When Solo came along, much to my surprise and chagrin, because Han Solo has long been my favorite Star Wars character, maybe a close second to Chewbacca, actually. So,
interesting.
So it was strange to me to be going off on a Saturday night to see a new Star Wars movie and to not feel that sort of giddy glow of I'm going to see a new Star Wars movie now. That said, I did really like the movie a lot. I have no problems with the movie. I have no problems with any of the performances. Really, really liked the movie. I just miss that Star Wars giddiness that I've had my entire life right up until the weekend that Solo came out.
Well, part of what we definitely have to talk about is the frequency at which we are getting Star Wars movies.
Right.
I think that's playing a big part.
And we might have to talk about whether every Star Wars anthology movie is going to be a heist movie.
It's all heist.
Because they've announced, I'm sure you guys have discussed on the podcast that they announced that James Mangold is making a Boba Fett movie.
Yeah.
And what can a standalone Boba Fett movie be if it's not going to be a heist movie of some sort?
A rom-com.
But
That's what I'm
It's a Star Wars version of Midnight Run. He's a bounty hunter. He's got to bring a guy across the galaxy, and
it's him and
they're
Bosk.
handcuffed.
That's right. Exactly.
Oh, it'll be great.
Yes.
It's him and Bosk at odds. Witty banter.
Does Bosk speak English?
Not that I'm aware of.
So it'll be subtitled.
Yeah.
Recipe for gold.
Witty banter always works better with subtitles.
That's right. It always works better with subtitles. Well, as Solo proved.
Right.
The witty banter when Han Solo spoke Wookiee. But we'll come around to that magic.
And sorry, I took us off on a tangent.
No, that was great.
I really liked it.
We'll definitely have a discussion on the frequency of Star Wars films because I do think there is a deeper discussion to be had around that for sure. Carson.
I think that Kelly captured my sentiment exactly. I quite liked the movie, but it lacked that special feeling that you've come to expect for these big Star Wars films. So I went to see it on opening night at Grant Park. We went to those comfortable chairs, and so the seating capacity is not as big as those other theaters, but it was packed, and people were engaged and enjoying it. And then last night I took my kids to see it again at Polo Park. Is mostly empty, and that does affect the way you consume the movie, right? It affects your own enthusiasm, and I thought that I'd like it better after seeing it a second time. Like Last Jedi, I quite enjoyed it the second time more than the first, and it's good to know that when we went to the first time, we were right in the front row on the end of the row, so it's like a 30-degree angle viewing this, and so there are certain things, aesthetic or otherwise, that I thought would change when I saw it at Polo Park. But no, I think I left feeling about the same. Good film, not bad. I kind of miss that nostalgia that came with knowing you're going to wait at least another 2 years before that big movie comes to screen, and the fact that you'll hardly know anything about it in the duration or in the time between, right?
All right, so it sounds like we have love, not love, like.
Yep.
Sounds
So
about
it's
right,
so it's a perfect equal balance of the Force here. The
The Force, coincidentally, not mentioned at all in the Solo movie for the first time ever in a Star Wars movie.
How about that?
Yeah.
What do you think?
I didn't miss it, to be honest with you. I didn't. It wasn't until afterwards when I was doing my traditional IMDb trivia list reading about the movie that I realized, no mention of anything relating to the Jedi or the Force. Of course, we did have the big cameo, which might come up in today's discussion as well. We're okay for spoilers, is that all right?
I think
Do it.
so.
Oh yeah. Well, let's say.
So we
here
have
go.
the big Darth Maul cameo, which of course hints at the Force, and we have what I thought was kind of the equivalent of lighting both ends of your lightsaber while you're talking on the phone, just for the kick of it, which didn't make a lot of sense to me. But
Yeah, but you would do that on FaceTime.
if I had a lightsaber
right.
and my friend called from Edmonton,
It was
I'd
for
say
the
hello
dummies.
and
It
I'd
was-
light my lightsaber.
It was for the non Star Wars fans who didn't know he was still alive.
Yeah,
that's
they
what
had
that
to-
was for, just to make sure they knew who it was.
Yeah.
That's all that was.
I think
But it
that-
would still confuse Star Wars
Yeah.
fans.
Oh, absolutely.
That's right.
No, I was
or
surprised.
not the hardcore, but just the average moviegoer was like, he died in 1999. What is he doing?
Or
here?
what I've been getting is, what's the timeline on
Yes,
this
that's
thing?
right.
Like, people think it's a Phantom Menace. It takes place at the same time as Phantom Menace.
I was very surprised by the
Yeah.
confusion over that. I thought that it was pretty
Yeah.
clear. Like, I thought most diehard fans knew that Darth Maul, came back to life and had robot legs and all that stuff. So I was pretty surprised over the confusion.
It's still a stupid idea. I'll just on top of everything, I don't like the Darth Maul came back to life. That was just stupid.
Well, they should
And
have
then-
killed him in the first place. That was
Yeah,
stupid.
just leave him dead.
Yeah, but they saved the stupidity for the animated show. You know what I mean? Like, the real stupid, which is seeing how he comes back, is
And
nothing we.
justifying that,
Yeah, we don't need to see that, right?
How his sanity is redeemed, all of that stuff that happens in a blink of an eye. It's all pretty ridiculous, but it's
Yeah.
sci-fi, I guess.
So Maul. We're talking about Maul. So did it work for you guys? Did it not work?
I like the surprise because I was not expecting that. Even when there was, I saw an article headline of there's a cameo that you'll never expect at the end of the movie. And then, I wouldn't expect this character that was killed on screen and then brought back in the cartoons would be in this film. And I think Kasdan's son really wanted to put Darth Maul in there from the beginning. And it just felt like a Marvel, tease, like after credits thing. They just hint at the next sequel, which is not going to happen now, unfortunately, due to the box office results. But he could be in the Boba Fett movie, but it just kind of felt unnecessary, just like another, we have to do a surprise, just kind of felt forced, and it didn't fit with the flow of the movie. And if you were just an average film goer, you're like, who is this? I thought he was dead. Or who is that? You don't even know who he is because you might have forgotten about the Phantom Menace because you only saw it once, nearly 20 years ago. So I just for the hardcore fans, I'm sure they loved it, and that's great. But it just kind of felt, why not even throw Snoke in there and just really troll the Star Wars fans? Let's throw Snoke and blow up everyone's theories and how does he fit in here? And just do that instead.
He's been around since before A New Hope.
See, he's been around. Yeah, exactly. And manipulating behind the
Pulling the
scenes. But we've already
strings.
had that guy. That's the problem with that.
My other problem was that it's Han Solo's girlfriend works for Darth Maul now. Han Solo's other girlfriend, her dad is Darth Vader. So they have this 1 degree separation from Darth Sidious or Darth Maul. It's just like, how does Han Solo have all this luck of his girlfriends?
Well, and also, I mean, even to begin with, Han Solo's probably the guy you'd be a little bit nervous about bringing home to introduce to your parents. Here's my new boyfriend, Han Solo.
he's a good guy.
But when that parent is Darth Maul, or when that overseer is Darth Maul, right?
How about you, Carson? What did you think about Maul's return?
My kids loved it, and they recognized his voice instantly.
Really?
Because they watched Clone Wars and Rebels over and over and over again. And so, like them, I kind of watch that. I read the comics, so I've got sort of this deeper connection, as you guys would, with the universe. And my wife, who predominantly lives through the saga films and whatever comes to a movie theater, she had no clue what to expect and who that was, and she could take it or leave it. And I think a lot of the audience felt that way, right, because of the disconnect. But it was sort of cool. We'll see where it goes.
I do appreciate that it was a surprise. Chris said that on Twitter to me the other day, and I'm like, yes, it was the one true surprise in the film. Like, what? But it was, the cool thing for me was that the slow realization, because I didn't know who he was immediately. He had the hood on. I'm like, is this Palpatine? Like, I didn't know what was going on here. And then to have that reveal, I don't think they needed the lightsaber. Like, that was kind of how many other guys with horns are there in the Star Wars universe? It's very clearly Darth Maul, but just to make sure the dummies knew who it was. And I mean, he can tie into the Boba Fett or the Obi-Wan. I think it would be interesting to have him in the Obi-Wan film. If the Obi-Wan film takes place between in this same time frame, which I imagine it will, sometime between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope, then put Maul in there. Maybe that's what they're setting it up for. He's going to be the villain in the Obi-Wan movie.
Yeah, I think the sequels that we'll get, like Chris, you said, we're not going to get Solo sequels. That's true. We probably won't. But I think the sequels will just be encompassed in like an Obi-Wan movie.
So do you think they're going to tie Boba Fett and Obi-Wan and sort of make it a trilogy of anthology movies?
It almost
Solo
seems like that's where it's
Marvel,
headed to me.
right?
Yeah. I don't know. What do you guys?
I think that's what they would like to do, and
Yeah.
I'm not sure how I feel about it. It's not really a big deal, but it's not been their thing, right? It's been a Marvel style of storytelling. So,
But it's also style storytelling that hasn't worked for anybody else except Marvel.
true. You're right. Dan.
DC has tried it. Even Universal tried to launch theirs with The Mummy last year. That failed miserably. So I don't know that anybody else can do it except for Marvel. They have the right story, like the structure of comic books and all their entire universe is kind of built for that, whereas Star Wars is not built for that, right? So I don't know.
Well, but although they're building it for that.
Well, they are now,
yeah.
but
It feels a little forced, though.
Yeah.
Like, no pun intended.
no, intend that pun.
yeah.
That's a great pun.
And with regard to Darth Maul, it seems to me that they sort of took the opportunity of him having been resurrected in Clone Wars and having appeared in Rebels to say, okay, we can get him back into this cinematic universe, if you will, now, right? And
I think they're realizing it was a mistake to kill him off in the first prequel movie.
I agree, but if they're going to keep it, like if they want to put him in an Obi-Wan movie, doesn't that become a little bit problematic? Because I've only watched the Clone Wars and Rebels once. So maybe I'm not that great of a Star Wars fan. But don't they establish sort of through his resurrection and rehabilitation, for lack of a better term, in Clone Wars, and then his storyline in Rebels, that he spent a lot of that interim looking for Obi-Wan and trying to figure out where Obi-Wan was. And then in Rebels, he finally finds him, right? So to have him and Obi-Wan appear together in an Obi-Wan movie that takes place between that time, it kind of blows the storyline that they covered in Rebels, I think.
I think the intent is to show the storyline that nobody watched on Rebels.
Right.
And just hope nobody picks it up, or
Well, no,
Well, maybe they'll just redo it live action. Is
Right,
that
we'll
what you're
give
thinking?
you live action style, like you see the cartoon version.
Right.
But I mean, to have that showdown in live action is something we've not seen.
I guess so, but it's a
never
bit of a
mimicked.
letdown, right? Because we know exactly how it ends, and that's the problem.
And
with
I
all
thought
of
it was
these films,
very
I
well
think.
done in Rebels. Particularly the last episode and last scene where they finally come face to face. I thought it was very well done in how understated it was and in how the actual fight took place. I couldn't see them bettering that in a live action movie personally. So
I agree with
but
that.
they could just redo it in live action. I don't know.
And I think that's part of the problem with these films that we've watched over the last couple of years is that we know the outcome, we know the end result to all of these characters, including Maul, right? And so there's less at stake. What can they do with Chewbacca, like hanging from the side of the train? We know we're going to pull Chewbacca back in. We know no one's at any real risk. I think we still enjoy the films, but if we could move into a new generation, a new era of the universe where there's, like we do in 7, 8, 9, where there's a lot more at risk. We don't know where the story's going, and there's excitement there.
Right.
And that's the promise we get from the announcement that Rian Johnson is going to do another trilogy, right? And that the Daves from Game of Thrones.
The Daves. These are the Daves I know.
Yeah.
I know.
And
Okay.
they're doing, are they doing movies or a TV show? I don't remember.
No, it's Jon Favreau's doing the TV show.
Favreau's doing
Favreau's
TV.
doing TV, of course.
He's
yeah.
the voice of the four-armed character,
Yes.
is he not?
Which
Yes.
it took me until the
Rio.
credits to figure out. I'm
Oh, yeah?
It'd be really cool.
Yeah,
if he
I was like,
hosted
I
this
know
TV
that
show
voice.
as that character. It's kind of like the Crypt Keeper. He introduces
Yes.
each show as
Oh, it'd be awesome. Okay, let's get back to Solo. Let's start with this. What did you guys hate about this movie? Pick one thing that you hated more than anything else in this film. Start with Carson.
Okay, I hope I don't steal anybody's notes, but I was frustrated with the aesthetic, and I mentioned earlier how I was in the first row, and I thought some of the stuff I was seeing was just a side effect of where I was sitting, or maybe it's a side effect of me having some terrible cataract that I'm not yet aware of. But I really felt like it was just desaturated, low contrast, generally really cloudy.
Certainly
and
that
dark.
opening sequence with the whatever the caterpillar lady and the Oliver kind of thing. Oliver Twist.
I think I would have liked highs and lows. Like, let's come out of that environment into something brighter with some.
Did you find that? So you found that throughout the whole film?
the whole film, and it
Okay.
may just be
Interesting.
my interpretation of it.
I don't think it's your interpretation of it at all, actually, because my understanding, based on an article I read, that I should be better as an educator about where I'm getting my information from. It might have been a BuzzFeed article or something like that. But there was an interview with a cinematographer whose name is Bradford Young, who actually has built a career on experimenting with low light photographic techniques. So it's his mandate and his shtick, if you will, to do low light photography. It's a great interview with him where he sort of talks about the thinking behind this and what he was studying in school and how he's trying to sort of establish a new school of cinematography that, believe it or not, is more diverse. Like, the idea is that all of the look of all the movies he shoots is based on what his grandmother's apartment in Chicago looked like when he was growing up. So he was purposefully using low light techniques and experimenting with that type of photography, and that was one of the reasons he was hired for the movie. So I don't think it's in your mind at all. I think it's just something that didn't work for you.
That's like the most niche of niche aesthetics, right?
No
My
kidding,
grandmother's
yeah.
apartment, and like how do we perceive that and accept that and receive it as an audience, right? Like, it's just so
Absolutely, yeah.
weird.
And how does he incorporate that into everything he does? And he specifically mentions the first Sabak scene that introduces Lando, and said, my goal in that scene was to make it look and feel like my grandmother's kitchen. And he says he feels like he succeeded. So now we know what his grandmother's kitchen was like.
Why was she hanging out with those people? That's what I want to know.
Why did she have aliens with eye stalks in her kitchen? Yeah.
That's right.
But yeah, so apparently that was the deal, is that this guy was deliberately using low light techniques. And
Just a couple last comments about the aesthetic is there were many times when I just couldn't get past his Ace Ventura hair. And many times it was a little more tame, and then he'd be out in the wind, and you'd get a real look at it. And
a
you'd
little
be
bit
like,
of a
"That's
lift on the
crazy."
pompadour.
Yeah. And then his voice, I've never seen, is Aiden, how do you say his last name?
Aaron Reich.
Aaron Reich.
Aaron
yeah.
Reich. I've never seen him in any of their films, so I don't know if that's his normal delivery, but I was kind of getting a little bit annoyed with it, thinking like it really felt like a forced Harrison impersonation, perhaps, and everything was dripping with sarcasm, and I thought maybe that's his normal delivery and I just need to get over it, but it felt a little strange at times. That's it.
All right. What did you hate, Kelly?
My hates are much more specific than Carson's.
Let's hear 'em.
There is one thing in particular that I really hated through the whole movie, and that was the establishment of why his last name is Solo.
Oh, that is a good one.
That
Yeah,
was the worst
that was
part
lame.
of the whole movie for me. I think they could just cut that scene, and the movie would actually gain.
Yeah,
from
I
it,
think
because-
when he gets out of there is when the movie takes off.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's when I was
Yeah.
like, oh,
And-
this is
yeah.
good. But
The
leading up
question
to
I
that,
had is-
I didn't think it was so good.
And
including that.
necessary,
Yeah.
Why did we need that?
Yeah. Why did
I
we-
think it might actually be the only time in the entire movie that his last name is even mentioned. Right? And it's so
Well, they mentioned a little
Random-
bit later because in Kira she eyebrow raised like, oh, that's weird. You're Solo now.
Oh,
kinda
right.
deal. But
Okay,
it's
so
very
they do, so-
obtuse, right? It's not.
And it's almost just to support the fact
Yeah,
that he didn't
right.
have the name before, right? So to have some anonymous Imperial recruitment officer decide, oh, you've decided today that you're in a bad mood and you don't want to talk about your family? Well, then we're going to call you Solo.
And then he kept the name for the rest of his life. He could have changed it
cool
to
with that.
anything
That's fine.
after he left
Yeah.
the
For the
Empire,
rest of
Imperial
his life,
Navy.
yeah.
It just seemed to fit.
It's,
Yeah.
I didn't care for that.
So I didn't like
But
that.
that's
yeah.
the Rogue One moment.
Yeah, that's the
Rogue
One.
We could just drop those
Yeah.
moments. That'd be great.
Well,
It's like, stop that ship.
that was Bodhi.
They just called themselves Rogue One.
Yeah. And he had the brainwashing monster that just makes you momentarily depressed.
Yeah.
As it turns out,
Well,
he's
and
like,
I think-
it's quite irreversible. But it just makes you sad for a bit. Then you pop up and you're improving names like left and right. Like it
You're
didn't
the
make
smartest guy in the crew.
Well,
now.
and exactly. And I think I mentioned
We'll
this.
let you fly the ship.
I think I mentioned this when we talked about Rogue One on the podcast, but yeah, if you're trying to escape or you're trying to get past the Imperial, why would you choose Rogue One instead of, say, Loyalist One
complacent
or
one.
or complacent one? Yeah, complacent. It's even got a nice little double entendre ring to it. Anything except I'm a rebel, right? So I, but that's a different movie and
respectfully
not the one we're
decline
here
to
to talk
engage
about.
one.
But if I may
Servient.
take advantage of the segue,
Subservient one.
in terms
That's
of
a
things
movie.
that just seemed out of place and underexplained, the other thing that bothered me was Tobias Beckett wearing Lando's Jabba the Hutt disguise.
Oh, I love that.
Oh, that was
order to
awesome.
That was kind of a
infiltrate-
cool callback.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, not to discount all the Man from Uncles and Mission Impossibles of the world, but I've always had the impression that Lando wore that outfit specifically to be a Jabba palace guard in disguise when they were trying to save Han in Return of the Jedi, and now he puts the same costume on to infiltrate
just
this
whatever's
slave
laying
trading.
around in
So,
the ship, yeah.
so are there just like, is there just sort of, is it like some kind of security company that exists through the Outer Rim that all wear these uniforms, and that's why it works? And then I couldn't figure out why it would work in both situations.
His
as a
walk-in
disguise.
closet is well established.
Yeah.
Kelly.
Or he has a
What
tick-
else do you need?
Yeah,
He's got
all those
He's got a
capes.
tickle trunk. And just like, what am I going to dress up? Here, you can wear this, Tobias.
I loved that they looked at the capes and they had like the really kind of the blue cape with the clouds on it that looked like really, and I was like, that one jumps right out at you, and I was like, that looks like a bizarre cape, and then that's the one that he's wearing in the last scene of the movie, so that was kind of
I
oddly
think that's
pleasing to me.
alluding to Cloud City and his future,
Of course,
as a whatever
Yeah.
he did. Investment.
Your turn, Chris. So what did you dislike the most?
Everything.
What I disliked was the plot of the film, and that
I hated the plot.
and that all the important things about Han's life happened in this 1 week period, and it's a 2-hour movie. He meets Chewbacca, he meets Lando, he learns his lesson about like shoot first and don't trust anyone. He wins the Falcon. Like all these kind of like lessons and life events that happened to him just happened in this 1 week period. And I know, maybe you have a very eventful week. We've all had a very eventful week in our lives, but everything we know about him in like A New Hope, kind of an Empire Strikes Back, it's like, oh, this is all going to happen in 1 week time on this one heist, essentially. So I felt like it would have been much better if the movie had started and he already knows Chewbacca. They're already friends, and maybe he already has met Lando. If they kind of just, that kind of classic Indiana Jones where they jump into the adventure right away. Han's already on his own adventure instead of this car chase through the garbage city. So I felt it was just kind of, and the Kessel Run as well. That was the other thing. Like he did the Kessel Run. Like, why do we have to cram all these things into one movie? I would rather just, again, leave my imagination, leave the mystery there, or maybe have him not reach the Kessel Run in the less than 12 parsecs. Oh, he only did it in 18. And so because is there an advisory board that kind of oversees the Kessel Runs? Because who can confirm this? There's just Han saying, yeah, I did it in 12 parsecs. Who else was there? My friend Chewbacca. There's no and why were you there? Oh, we were stealing fuel from the mine. Like he'd get arrested. They'd everyone would be out for him. So I don't know how you could also is Lando for 1 week just kind of that's the ship that made the Kessel Run in 12 parsecs and everyone
Marketing
believes Lando.
campaign.
Yeah, why you were there? Oh, you're just there for fun,
I like that idea. It could have been 18 parsecs, and then he thinks, well, they said
that.
it couldn't be done less
Yeah.
than 20, and I did 18. So next time we need a smuggling shortcut, we're going for 12, Chew.
Yeah.
That would have been good, actually.
I think for this, if they had done a sequel, then there's pretty much they could do whatever because other than meeting Jabba the Hutt, all his other life events have
There's
been covered.
nothing left. All of the boxes got ticked. in
Yeah,
this
that was
movie.
my I checked. It was like all these check boxes that you had mentioned about Avengers or Black Panther. This was the same thing. Checkbox of he meets all this. He helps fund. I will say I was surprised there was no Boba Fett, and he somehow funded the Rebel Alliance. Other than that,
I think that's probably, other than the opening sequence, which I didn't care for, I think that's my least favorite part.
Mine too.
Is that connection that he gave them the money. We don't need it all to tie together like this, and that's kind of the thing. A lot of people online are having an issue with the character of Han Solo as depicted of him being generous enough to give them the money and blah blah blah, and he's a scoundrel. But I don't think he's a scoundrel yet. I think he's still young and naive, and he's kind of burned by his girlfriend. So this is the beginning of the decline for him as far as his personality goes. So,
and I think they kind of addressed that in the movie, and what was actually one of my favorite little scenes in the movie was the little conversation he has with Kira when he meets her in
that place,
Paul Bettany's
Dryden, his name's
apartment, Dryden
Voss.
Voss. Yeah.
His yacht.
When she meets him there and they have a discussion about what's been going on, and he says, "Well, I'm an outlaw, baby." I added the baby, but it was implied. And she says, "You're not an outlaw. You're the good guy." And I thought that kind of scene that really worked for me because that sort of sums up his character. Han Solo is a character who thinks he's a lot more badass than he actually is when it comes down to being in the moment and deciding morally what he needs to do next. He always does the right thing. We've known that since the end of A New Hope, right?
And I think another just to go back to the online discussion, that's another issue people have had with it, where they think in their minds he's never done the right thing, and the moment in A New Hope where he does is the first time. That's what people seem to think.
Oh yeah,
right.
That's
That was
valid.
that's the character making the decision to come back and help Luke.
Yep.
That's that moment, and so they don't realize that no, he could always do this. Like it could be something he's just always there for people when he need to be. But I don't know. I think the big issue, kind of, if we could move the discussion to the online reaction, which is like, I don't know, we're gonna have a whole other episode about the Star Wars fandom right now. Because
We never asked them what they loved about it.
Oh,
We just asked for
we'll
hate.
get to that. We'll get to that. I've got a plan. We'll get to
Sith
that.
Lord.
Doesn't have to be like so cookie cutter, Kenton. We don't have to check off the boxes.
You just want to concentrate on the negative.
No. I just trying to flip it around. Okay, but yeah, like a lot of people, what they really don't like about this movie is that it messed with their preconceived notions about who Han Solo is,
Right.
and they don't like the story that they came up with. I saw someone, a friend of mine, just saw it last night. She posted a big long thing on Facebook about it, saying that she loved the original story, which is non-canon now, or never was canon, is that he served with distinction in the Imperial Navy, and then was discharged because he rescued Chewbacca, who was a slave. They didn't do it that way in the movie, and so people are upset that they didn't do it that way. But I'm okay with that. We don't need to have that story told the exact same way. So that's the issue. I think most people are just kind of pissed that it's not the Han Solo I love.
Can we pause there for just a second? I've got some thoughts related to what we've been saying as far as our perception and our how we cherish Han Solo the character. I agree completely with Chris in that I think they checked way too many boxes, but at the same time it did give us an inside look, a new perspective of what Han Solo is. But what I've really wrestled with in the last few hours since seeing it the last time is funny how like our perception of Solo as a character is a rough around the edges good guy hero versus just imagine how he's perceived in universe. Because think about this for a few minutes, right? From an in-universe perspective, he has to be the worst smuggler ever. Because he's, first off, that coaxum for Lady Proxima, and now we know as fans and as an audience that he held back and kept the coaxum, but he failed there. Then he fails at the train heist, right? Again, noble deed, but still. And then the coaxum for Dryden, big fail. I mean, he did the right thing. And then, of course, we know all about the drop shipments in Episode 4 and his reputation as being this crap smuggler. So I've been sort of wrestling with this whole idea of, like, how we see Han Solo and how what's endearing about him to us would make him, like, completely ineffective in the role he's supposed to play in this Star Wars universe. So, anyway,
That's a really good
That's a good
point.
point. And not to mention the confrontation in the Force Awakens when he runs into like the
he loses
Kanji
those
Club and
wrath
those guys are like,
Yeah.
what have I ever done you wrong? Twice or
Yeah.
whatever. What was the second time? Like that whole thing. He screws up a lot.
He's terrible.
And why would a guy who has a well-established reputation for having to drop shipments take on such dangerous cargo as the cargo that he takes on in The Force
Gets
Awakens?
bounced all over the place.
Because you know,
Because he talks his way out of it every time.
Because eventually you're just going to have to drop these things into space, and they're going to cause chaos for some other planet or
The
situation.
environmental damage Han Solo's done alone. It's ridiculous.
Well, and sort of stemming from that, it implies at the end of the movie that he's going straight off to meet Jabba the Hutt.
this is going to end
and
well.
this
Right.
takes place 10 years before A New Hope, according to what I
So he's got a decade. Yeah, he's got
So
about
he's
a decade.
got a decade of working at least on and off for Jabba the Hutt before,
Well, depending on what happens.
or
yeah.
he drops that first shipment and he's been on the run for almost a decade.
No,
He wouldn't be on
wouldn't need him.
Tatooine.
He
Yeah,
would-
why would he still
Yeah.
be on
Well,
Tatooine?
but that begs the question: why was he on Tatooine during the A New Hope? Because he'd already Greedo comes up to him right in that famous scene, and Jabba's already pissed about it. So why is he back on Tatooine, which is right in Jabba's backyard?
He's trying to get people to fly on his ship so he can pay back Jabba.
I guess so.
Yeah.
And I guess that's also now. I guess let me ask you guys this: as far as the character of Beckett goes, was Beckett too close to the Han Solo we know? It seems to me that that's what they're doing. Han Solo is trying to emulate his behavior after Beckett, who he only knows for a week, but then like becomes his hero and his mentor. And so that Beckett to me is Han Solo of our childhood. Like that is exactly the same as Han Solo I remember. So
Let's just remember Raiders of the Lost Ark for a second, where in the third chapter, when River Phoenix meets basically Indiana Jones, and
5 minutes.
he gives that's
right, that's right.
Here's
Yeah.
the hat that will define the rest of your life.
Well, and I was kind of
and you.
surprised that in Solo we didn't get any explanation of the scar.
Oh,
Like talking about things
It's
being
a- well, we
established.
know
at the
it's a
start,
whip.
They did make sure he had the scar, but they didn't do anything to explain the scar.
We don't need
Some
to.
childhood trauma.
Yeah.
To justify that 2 times in different universes.
that's right. It's a whip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How
I guess in Solo, it's like
Every movie
his
they
dad
just
hit
tried
him.
to
You know, it's too
explain,
dark.
Like Saul Guerrero's Lazy Eye or something. Like,
But I really wanted them to explain the scar regarding Henry. That was my. They didn't explain the scar.
But back to Tobias Beckett, I think those are all very valid points that, for me, were completely overwashed by the fact that it was Woody Harrelson.
He was so good.
And can we just marvel at a moment at the fact that you can just drop Woody Harrelson into any movie, any genre, any situation? He's essentially playing Woody Harrelson most of the time. But it always works. Like
loved it.
I'm thinking
too.
next time I take my daughter to see a My Little Pony movie, they might just drop Woody Harrelson in there, and I'm fully confident that it'll work.
Yeah,
a bunch of
last night I
animated
felt
ponies
like-
and Woody Harrelson, and he will fit.
I was happy that Woody Harrelson was such a big part now of the Star Wars universe.
Yeah.
I thought this is good for him. He's great.
He was great.
I loved him too, and it wasn't as on the nose as our friend in Raider in what's the third one, Last Crusade.
Yeah, who basically was, he looked exactly like Indiana Jones, right?
Right,
Like, you could,
there is a direct comparison to be made in that little intro.
Yeah.
Like what they spent 5 minutes on in the Last Crusade.
Because Beckett gave Han Solo his blaster, which apparently he's never, changed or
It's the same one,
Same
yeah.
which is
one.
actually a rifle, but he's never kitted it out to be a rifle again, right?
Yeah,
He did. Yeah, he did take it apart there in the scene.
He takes the
I think
stock off and then tosses it at Han.
People made too big of a deal out of that scene. Like, I was talking to somebody on Twitter about it, and he's like, "Oh, they didn't need to push in. Like, there was a push in and a focus on the gun or something." I don't know that they did. I don't remember that part
They
of
kind
it.
of highlighted a little bit. They made
Yeah.
they made
There's just
made sure to look at it. This is what he's doing. Like, pay attention.
But
yeah,
it was just
and
like
he throws
Beckett-
it to Han, and then there's a quick cutaway, and it lands in Han's lap, and there's a quick close-up cutaway that this is the gun. And
Because they didn't have to do that. Because here's your black. Like it had just handed the weapon to him, but they showed him
But
taking it apart.
I thought that his reaction was more of a, "Oh, cool! I've got a blaster now." Like that was Han's. Like that's what he's trying to do. Is like,
Right.
This I'm awesome now. Like this is that was the reaction I saw.
And then, they gave that whatever Chewbacca wears. They gave
The
that
bandolier.
Bandolier again. Chewbacca. I'm never gonna change. This is my life this is me for the rest of my life. I'm wearing this.
Yeah.
But in
Just
Force
like
Awakens,
Indiana Jones's little satchel.
Force Awakens, he hands Rey the silver gun for no reason,
Weird looking gun.
and it's never really paid
blow
off.
dryer.
Yeah, it's never paid off as being anything. But there's the same moment you were talking about, Chris, where they're like, "Pay attention to this gun," and it's like really has never paid off. Like it's just okay.
Yes.
I'm paying attention to it. It's silver, so it's noteworthy.
And I think
Very
the whole
much.
point is we need the kids to know which gun this is for when they're standing in Walmart.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
and they
think
see it on the shelf. They've got to know that's Ray's gun, right?
Some truth to that.
right. But storytelling tells you that if you're doing that, then somewhere like
This
it's
is going to pay off at some point.
Right. The old adage of if there's a gun in the first act of a play, someone's got shot in the last act of the play.
Yeah.
And so we don't really
Well,
that
they did hide it in the lid of the coaxium container, but I don't know that necessarily was a big payoff at all. It was just
Not really.
Because they saw it, they knew it was there.
Yeah.
Just Han's gun, right?
yeah.
Okay, what did you guys love? Seriously, what did you guys love about it? I wanna know.
Seriously.
Chris, what did you love about it? So one thing you loved.
I loved seeing more of Chewbacca and seeing his story. He wasn't just this little sidekick that kind of complains and does something on the side. In the other movies, he actually had a bit of an arc, and he had his moments to either stick with Han or go with his people, and he stuck with Han. So I thought it was great to just kind of see more of him and see where he ended up. Like I didn't really care for him appearing in episode 3. Again, that was forced and just like eye rolly. But this one, it kind of felt appropriate, and it was just get to see more of him. It kind of strengthens A New Hope, where you have this you kind of like seeing this character in Solo, and now you get to see him in a smaller role in A New Hope. I enjoyed seeing Chewbacca get a bigger role.
No life debt though.
No, I
Is that
like-
bad?
I think they probably go back and forth. Like you saved me and I saved me again, so I'll just get you the
Hold on.
next time.
Is the life debt canon?
I believe the life
Not
debt is
anymore.
canon because
Didn't,
they address it in one of the Aftermath novels, which is titled
Okay.
Aftermath Life Debt.
Okay.
And it's about Han and Chewie
But I'm just
going
saying,
back
in
and
the
liberating
original
Kashyyyk.
in the original trilogy,
Ben
did they ever
mentioned it.
refer to him having a life debt? He was just Han's buddy. That's all I ever got
I
from
think
it.
Ben mentions it in the cantina, doesn't he? Chewbacca here owes Han a life debt. Maybe I'm just dreaming that.
Which begs the question
I
of
don't
how would
think he
Obi-Wan
says
know
the
that?
words life debt,
No,
does he?
Maybe not.
It just might have just happened in like one of the comic books or novels, and it just kind of spread out.
Yeah,
to
I feel like
fans
I've always
online.
been aware of it, but I can't track it back to a specific moment.
neither
in
can
the
I.
original trilogy.
It's
It's
a
probably
concept
something
I'd like
read.
to adopt in real life, like from now on.
If Han,
I owe Kenton a life debt.
Yeah, we all do.
you just reminded me of something, and that is, okay, so if Han and Chewie are on Tatooine for 10 years, and so's Kenobi's there over the same time period, when Kenobi and Chewie meet up at Mos Eisley Cantina, they might already know each other.
Right?
Han
So
can't
maybe,
know him.
maybe
Han
there's
just knows him
something
as
else
old
to
man.
tell in the Obi-Wan movie, right? Maybe this is going to be in a trilogy, and we will get a story about Obi-Wan on Tatooine meeting Chewbacca through some crazy set of
But
circumstances.
it can't be Han. He can't meet Han.
Yeah, and it would have to be
Han's
a
with some
story,
lady.
Right.
essentially, about him doing something to protect the Skywalkers,
Right.
or protect Luke and Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen, without revealing to them that he's there or something, right? So it would have to be another kind of subterfuge heist movie of sorts.
Doesn't really sound all that exciting to me, though.
No.
That's the problem. Then you
But we'll
pad
get
it
to
with
see him
other-
meof Chewie.
That's true.
I think it's just
the
time to
Beast,
get
the
out of this
Beast.
time
Yeah.
frame. I think we need to move ahead or something.
I agree with you. And I
Yeah.
think there are too many, although, you enjoy the callbacks and little Easter eggs that are in these movies that, oh, yes, that's from this movie. But I agree that we need to move beyond the, this time period of time. We need to go either way into the past or into the future. Because we already know this stuff, and we don't need to see it. So I guess I do kind of agree with you, Chris, in a way. We don't need to see all this stuff played out on the screen. It needs to serve a purpose other than to show us, oh, this is how this happened.
Yeah, I think you could have nostalgia fatigue. Like, I think that could be an
That's true.
issue, too. Like, because obviously nostalgia didn't win the day for the Solo film, right? I mean,
I think that was part of the problem of the film is that they had the trailer and there was nothing, exciting, or there was no X factor. It's like, oh, it looks like he meets Chewie and he gets the Falcon. There was, they've seen prequels just don't do well at the box office, so there was no mystery or what's going to happen here, or even like at least Rogue One had more of, they kind of relied on the imagery of the Death Star and stormtroopers and all that kind of stuff. There was at least that kind of X factor of, there's going to do but this was just kind of it seems like an adventure film, and there's no Harrison Ford, and I don't like the casting, and it just didn't, I think, appeal to a lot of people because it's like we've seen this before. Like, I already know, I don't care.
I think also in the marketing they're afraid to show Han. I think that was the other problem. Like they're like, I don't think this might not work, so let's show this other stuff, and it gave people a different impression of what the movie might
The marketing
be hiding.
was very much pulled back. They did not do as big a marketing push as they usually
And the
do.
jokes in the trailers to me were awful. Did not land. Whereas the movie itself, I thought they did, like the shower scene, and like some of that stuff was hilarious. But in the trailer, I didn't get the sense of the tone of the film, and maybe that's a problem too with the marketing. But anyway, Kelly, what did you love? Sorry.
Well, my first choice, and the thing I was thinking about talking about, Crystal. And I was going to say that I loved that this is the first Star Wars movie where Chewbacca has agency, where he's not basically a glorified pet or a sidekick, right? It even bothered me at the end of Force Awakens when we've got the big climax and Leia comes off the ship, rushes right by Chewie to give Rey a hug, this person she's never met before. I would have thought she would want to console Chewie a little bit after they both lost Han, you know what I mean? But anyway, so I loved in this movie that Chewbacca became a real boy, and he had decisions to make, and he was sort of following his own bent at points. I love the scene in the slave trader sequence where Chewie sees other enslaved Wookiees and sort of turns to Han, and it's like, it's what I gotta do, man. They're my people. I've got to go help them. And Han says, "You go do your thing." All of that stuff I loved. But Chris, I think, covered that fairly well. So if I may, I'll add one other quick thing that I really liked was one of those ticked box Easter egg things, but one that I wasn't expecting, and that was that L337 becomes, in essence, the Millennium Falcon's personality, and pays off one little line way back in A New Hope where C-3PO refers to the fact that the Millennium Falcon has a strange dialect, right? Or is
I didn't catch that.
is
That's
kind
the
of
point. Yeah.
And there was I feel like this might not have been one of the actual films. This might have been in a comic or some kind of ancillary thing I read. But I feel at one point that C-3PO also pointed out that the Millennium Falcon was kind of cranky. when he was trying to communicate it with her.
Yes,
don't know if it was
I agree.
one of the
I remember
original
that.
movies. And that's all paid off by L337's personality being uploaded into the navigational system, which I thought was a really neat little fan service Easter egg. Personally.
People, I don't know why people are upset about L3. I think she was a great character, interesting, funny. But people are making way too big of a deal out of the so-called romantic relationship between Lando and L3. Like, come on,
it's
guys.
a tossed-off joke.
Like people are reading way too much into this.
But just like that one line that C-3PO says about the Millennium Falcon having a strange dialect and being kind of cranky, you can't put a toss-off joke into the Star Wars universe without everybody tearing it to pieces and parsing it out until it's just mashed into dust, right? So they must have been aware of that.
I don't know. All right,
But
Carson.
that brings me to my third favorite thing, Donald Glover. And I think we can just leave it at saying that.
Well, he was featured prominently in the marketing campaign, but then in the final film, he's not in it as much as really
Not as
what
much as I was expecting, but I thought that was kind of good. Just like I think Boba Fett is cooler the less we know about Boba Fett, I thought having Donald Glover, not overusing him, made him that much better in this movie.
Like they should have made him hate clouds. I hate clouds. I want nothing to do with them.
They're moist.
They get into things. That's right, exactly. And then later on, it's like, how ironic.
Tell you what I'm never going to do. I'm never going to mine gas.
That's right. Because that's where clouds are, and I hate them.
Yeah.
It's well established. Carson.
So I have three favorite characters, and we've touched on two of them. L337's really cool. She may have been a little bit over the top with the freedom fighting and the equal rights for the droids, but that was the shtick. And
That's the perfect droid for the Me Too era. It's perfect, right?
I thought she was a very cool character. And I also liked Donald Glover as Lando. The weird thing is, it's when you're doing an imitation of a well-known character, when you're in a biopic, and now I'm playing Ray Charles, and I do a pretty good Ray Charles. It is an indication of your acting ability, I suppose, but it's also imitative, right? It's a little weird, but he was perfect. And he did bring a little depth to that character. We got to see a little bit more about him. And even when he's not acting, they did a good job of giving you an indication of what he's like. Perfect scene for this was when Han calls a bluff, or when he bluffs that he's got 30 troopers, hired hands in that freighter.
Another of my favorite moments in the movie.
And then the Donald Glover character, or Lando, just flies off, right? And that speaks to the character of Lando. It was funny. It was fantastic. Okay, then the third character I really loved was the Captain of the Marauders, the Enfys Nest masked character, and just sort of you saw that character as a pretty evil character at the beginning. The electric voice was very cool, and then I think we all kind of knew via the internet that this was going to be a female character. But
I did not. I thought I thought it could be, but I didn't. I had no sense that it would be.
And then just the strength in the character once the helmet came off, and I thought that was kind of cool. I'm not sure how I feel about. I liked that she was sort of the infancy of the rebellion. I was okay with that, but that Han contributed and bankrolled it was weird. But still, that character to me was a good, effective character. And I like two of those three characters I liked were new characters to the universe, and that's. I didn't have not thought that that's where I'd lean because of so nostalgic for your favorites, Luke, Leia, and so forth. But this was. They were cool characters to me,
and there are two new female characters as well, which is something. And that's just
good ones.
Well, good ones, but another big blowback is that this film doesn't pass the Bechdel test or whatever it is, where two female characters have to have a conversation that doesn't involve a male, and the only conversation we have is between L3 and Kira, and they're talking about Lando.
Freaky robot sex with Lando.
Yeah. So.
He didn't bang a robot. It's well established canon. He didn't bang the robot.
I think
she says that he has the hots for her, which implies that she was not sure, which means that there has been no banging.
But she did also confirm that they're compatible. It works.
And that it works.
It
well,
works.
but she bangs something or one,
work?
but not him yet. We talked about the box office being soft for Solo, but what role does the frequency of these movies play in your mind, and like what should the frequency of Star Wars movies be? So Carson.
Okay, so the studio won't go about this at all because there's more money to be made by frequent releases. But like for fans who have gone 10 plus years between films, I could easily go 2+ years between films. And me as a fan, I'd be so pumped and excited for that release. it'll never happen. But I'm not sure how I feel about going to a Star Wars film every 6 months, especially if they're not all going to be great, well-rounded, well-developed films. And Dan is on to something, right? Like, how does Marvel get away with this to a point where we're totally cool with it? We love the films. We keep going back.
I
There's
hate
something
them.
new.
I hate them with
Wow.
Go ahead.
But maybe, like, I don't know, were you a comic book reader as a kid?
Yeah.
And
Very
that was
much.
me
And
too,
Marvel,
but I just
very
thought
much
maybe
so.
that would transfer.
I thought what's my theory is that it's too much dessert. It's
okay.
all every wish fulfilled in these
true.
films, and I don't want I want, like, I just think they give us too much too fast,
Mm-hmm.
and I think people now go dutifully to see those films, but I don't think there's joy in it. That's what I've seen. I just think
I
it's
sit
I'm
there watching-
obligated to go see
it's
Black Panther.
what's
and
marketing?
never go.
Marketing is habit forming behavior.
Yeah.
So way to go. The marketing worked, and God bless them. But I just don't. I thought Black Panther and I thought Infinity War were just stinky, like on a level that I can't believe you liked it. But on a massive level of disappointment, I would put those right up at the top.
I'll wrap
They're the
it
most
up.
popular films in their franchise. That's the other
Yeah,
thing.
exactly. That's right. And there's no accounting for taste. But go ahead.
Well, I'll wrap it up, but just by saying that, like, for me, the magic of Star Wars was the anticipation, and I think that's no longer evident. I'm not seeing that. I'm not feeling it in the same way. And I know I'm 42. I'm not 12, but I think I'd like to still have some of that magic.
But part of Star Wars is bringing the childlike
Yeah,
excitement alive and Star Wars has always been all ages entertainment right from the word go. Like, adults loved it, kids loved it. It was appropriate. It was like for families. It was like the classic for everyone media, but now we live in a niche media world. So maybe that sometimes I make myself sad by thinking maybe I just can't get excited about a Star Wars film like I could when I was 9 years old, right? So I don't know.
See, for me,
Is it
though,
over?
I could up until Solo. And again, I don't think it's the movie's fault. I think it's the circumstances' fault, right? It's you mentioned the Marvel's movies, and I don't need to say too much about this because I think Kenton and Carson basically summarized all of my feelings on this aspect of it pretty effectively. But it's diminishing returns, and I think the Marvel universe, when I compare how excited I was to go see the first Iron Man movie with how excited I was to go see Doctor Strange, there just isn't any comparison. I loved Infinity War. I'm still out to see every Marvel movie on opening weekend. Still out to see every Star Wars movie on opening weekend. But that childlike excitement, that giddiness, that, yes, today I get to see a new Star Wars movie. It just wasn't there this time. And again, not because of the movie, not because of Alden Ehrenreich, not because of changes in directors, just because of that loss of anticipation. Just straight up diminishing returns, I think.
You know what Star Wars would never get away with? I need 6 stones in my gauntlet, and each one is a painfully boring plot point, which I will speak on in very long, laborious monologues over the course of a 2.5-hour film. I just think we give a pass to Marvel where we will not give it to Star Wars.
Or they can just have another space station that blows up a planet. We can do that story for the fourth time.
That needs to go. Even the trench run in Force Awakens. I'm not a massive fan of the Force
Are the
Awakens.
Infinity Stones not somewhat analogous to catwalks without railings in the Star Wars universe?
No, they're
or precariously placed buttons and switches, which I thought have always been a very core aspect of Star Wars plotting.
I think, how many Infinity Stones were there, by the way? 7?
Six.
Okay, so I guess they're the first time. Oh my God! So there, how could I forget after those laborious plot points?
Space, time, soul.
That's right. All right, so those 6 Infinity Stones are 6 MacGuffins. It's like the idea, like, one is not enough. Yeah. We must have 6 MacGuffins now. I would take one little thing without railings per film than 6. Like, we need 6 catwalks without railings now. Like, that's sort of like, that's the problem is superheroes follow a genre, sci-fi follows a genre, and how can you keep it being new and fresh when these tropes are kind of, at this point, like, what do fans want? Do they want the same old tropes, or do they want something new?
So Kelly, can I just 2 seconds? Yeah. Kelly spoke about the aesthetic and about that. I don't know if it was an art director, but how the cinematographer,
Bradford Young, the cinematographer,
right, how he wanted to make it look like a specific aesthetic. Here's a really cool idea. What if they did everything they possibly could, and I don't just mean aesthetically, but in every aspect of the film, to give us a film that looked like it came out in 1986. Do you know what I mean? Like that to me would be the next level of nostalgia, next level of capturing what I know Star Wars to be. But I think we make 2018 films, right? We make films that have the pacing of a 2018 film, and we don't stop for dialogue unless you're Thanos, I suppose. But anyway, that to me would be a cool project. Yeah. How about your next, design and aesthetic and creative decisions be based around a period from the 80s or something? I don't know. Sorry if
that's interesting.
I would like to see Rogue One kind of feel like a 1970s shot film. They kind of found the right balance, but it was still, it's a modern film. But maybe it wasn't so modern because they killed everyone off, which is maybe a throwback to older films where you could kill off the whole cast.
The Dirty Dozen, or any of those,
But for frequency, I think it was too short, and as well, it was like a film that. It wasn't connecting with audiences. There was too many problems of production, and the final product was not enticing enough to get you amped up for this film. And it was kind of overshadowed by Deadpool 2 and Infinity War. So I think if they could maybe at least 1 or 2 years and just have a great product, and I think people will get excited again. If you just we're gonna rest on our laurels and just, hey, people will show up to Star Wars because it said Star Wars. And I think that was kind of maybe the attitude where we're going to do a 4-month marketing campaign and we're not going to do the trailer until Super Bowl, whereas the other films would at least have an 8th-month campaign where you get you excited, where one trailer in the spring, another in the summer and fall, and kind of get you amped up, where this was just kind of like condensed, and it just never felt like a must-see opening night movie to me and a lot of people.
Well, the habit-forming behavior for Star Wars has now been Christmas.
And I think that's what they should stay there. As far as I know, Episode 9 is slated for Christmas of 2019.
Right.
So I think that's that to me. I associate Christmas. I used to associate it with the Harry Potter films, and also Lord of the Rings always came out at Christmas time. So I think it's a great tradition to go see a certain type of movie at that time of year. And I have no problem seeing a Star Wars movie every year. I can still get excited. I think this one was too close to. All the stuff you guys said absolutely was a factor in this. So it's a perfect comedy of all these things coming together. But what we might find is that if they keep doing these anthology films, is that Rogue One was the exception to the rule as far as it did really well, but these other ones might not ever do as well as the saga films. And I'm okay with that.
I think a lot of Rogue One was playing off the excitement of Force Awakens.
Yeah, but it also had X-Wings and Darth Vader and the Death Star. It felt more like a traditional Star Wars movie than even the Force Awakens did, kind of.
And I think it'll be really interesting to see what happens after Episode 9, because after Episode 9, to a certain extent, they're in a transitionary period, right? They're going to have to lean away from nostalgia and into deciding what is the new Star Wars going to be, the genuinely new Star Wars going to be. How do we move forward from the end of the Skywalker saga, which really 7, 8, and 9 is still dealing with? What do we do beyond that? How do we leave that nostalgia behind and create Star Wars that, from a marketing perspective, is what they have to do, that attracts a new generation of fans? I think the proof will really be in what happens after Episode 9, as far as whether they can survive and whether they can put down that crutch of nostalgia and still have a Star Wars universe that feels as vital and exciting to me as the current one does.
There's so much in production, though. I don't think that we're going to solve the problem of too much Star Wars. Yeah. If anything, that's the future of Star Wars is too much Star Wars for everybody. So you're going to have to choose your fandom within the fandom in terms of what it is that you want to take in. But after this Solo movie, are you going to rush to the next Star Wars, or are you going to? How are you feeling about it?
Opening weekend. It will.
Always.
Yeah, that's not going to change for me.
Yeah, opening weekend. Yeah.
If the trailer drops and it's amazing, I'll be there.
But maybe not.
But you never know. If it's like doesn't I'll see it in.
I won't have the butterflies in my stomach, but I will be there.
I will try to do opening night still. I love opening night. I had a great time. All right. Thanks, guys, for coming in.
Yeah,
thank you. A lot of fun.
Thanks to our guests. And we need to have you in for, I think, even a wider ranging discussion where Chris and Kelly and Carson have hours to spare. We can sit down and we
wants to
can talk
listen
for
to that?
3 hours. I think
Sounds
we need.
like fun.
I think we need to get it out of our systems.
All right.
And then I can tell you about how much I hate the third movie in the Lord of the Rings as well.
Oh, man.
But we didn't have time for
Looking
it
forward
today.
to that, too.
I hate it more than Thanos. Sorry, go ahead.
All right, that's going to do it for this episode of the Star Wars Nerds podcast. I'm Dan Vadabonker.
I'm Kenton Larson. Don't let the Force hit you in the ass.
421, do you copy?
Now I am the master.
I'm taking an awful risk, Vader. This had better work.
Where did you dig up that old fossil?